Ryan, how you doing?
Good morning. How are you?
Morning, good morning. Good. I'm okay. A little bit tired, but I'm in a good mood. And again, I just said welcome to Jennifer off camera, but welcome to her. So I'm recording this, guys. I'm gonna do the overview for um, for the lesson for this week because it just dropped, and if anybody else jumps in, obviously I'll be mid conversation, mid talking about it. But I will, try to get this in about 5 minutes. Run through the PowerPoint, run through the uh, what the reading looks like in the word organizer, and then I'll take questions from you guys if you have questions on the assignments or the work. Again, this is just like an overview, just like the ones I posted before. So there's going to be some explanations, but most of the details, the things we'll get to tomorrow. So this is more just like this is what the assignment is and all that. So that being said, this is the last week of Oedipus Rex, fourth week of our mythology unit, and this takes us through the end of Oedipus Rex. We divided it into three parts. Oedipus Rex, pages 26 to 40 of the text, although what I've done is just basically cut the earlier parts of the play, which are available from the other assignments, and if you can't access them, you should be able to access them because the assignments are still open. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you can always just reach out to me in the chat and ask me for a file copy of it, and I'll send it to you. It's also available for free on SparkNotes if you just type in to your search engine of choice, Oedipus Rex SparkNotes. But this is basically just the file specifically kind of cuts the last to the last part, so you only have that last section. And so we'll be reading that and talking a lot about irony as the literary element for the week, the three types of irony, and applying it to what we find out about the fate and destiny of Oedipus and Jocasta, and Creon, and everyone in Thebes, basically. The do now is a link to a YouTube video for the song "You're Blind" by Run DMC. Blindness has a lot to do with the irony in the story. So we have basically you can listen to the entire song if you want, but really the first minute of the song is where we're at for the do now question. You're just explaining the title of the song. What does it mean to be blind? You're annotating for notes, what's important, what clues, words, or phrases in the song that you can use as evidence to help prove the title of the song, and what it means to be blind in general. So Run DMC, my generation hip hop and rap artist. Although I will admit to this is not my do now choice. If I had to choose a different a song, I'm not sure what I would choose, but this is as good a song as any that has to deal with blindness. Our aim for the week, really, is how can we analyze themes in the Greek tragedy of Oedipus the King. So the themes that we basically have seen about, being blind to the truth, that kind of stuff, and the tragedy that falls because of it. These first few slides, I'm going to kind of skip through them. You can read them on your own time. And basically, it's just more background information to kind of understand when and where Sophocles wrote this play, what the government in Athens, Greece was like during the time, and how that kind of that and the religious ideas kind of led into the idea of what people's fates and destinies were. And we did talk about that in the first week, the idea of do we have control over our fates and destinies? So this is, the more about the connection to the Greeks and the Greek gods and the religion aspect. So you can read that on your own. The fate and free will aspect is important. This slide basically goes over that the Greeks did to some extent believe in free will. And free will is not more powerful than fate, but there are some choices that people can exert um, in their life that don't necessarily counteract what their fate is. So Oedipus is a perfect example of belief that, try as they might, people cannot avoid the destinies to which they were born. Nonetheless, Oedipus's fate is a result of his father's earlier misdeed. Human free will cannot be completely dismissed either. So there's a definition of free will for you there. Three major elements of tragedy in Oedipus King. So this is a little bit more formal, but we've almost kind of last week talking about knowing the truth and how that reaction impacts you. Basically, there's a reversal of fortune from good to bad. That's called peripetia. There could be a change from ignorance to knowledge. People will discover something or know the truth about something. This is called anagnosis, excuse me. And then a suffering scene, some sort of like consequence where you do see the person go through some trouble, whether it's pain and suffering, physically, mentally, emotionally, or all three, because of what they realize is the truth of their situation. We talked last week, the do now was about tragic flaws, the tragic flaws in a hero. Formal way of saying that is Hamartia. So this is just another this slide is a recap of stuff you should know from last week, that Hamartia, an error in judgment or perception or character flaw, is when the hero of a story or protagonist does not see what he or she is doing is ultimately going to lead to their end in some way. So there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of blindness in terms of not being able to see what's wrong and fix it before it's too late. Sometimes with Hamartia there is something called hubris, which is exaggerated self-pride or arrogance. And there is a very famous religious cliche, pride goeth before a fall. And generally in many stories of literature, characters who too confident in themselves, they end up making a mistake, and it ends up backfiring or hurting them in some way. So this slide talks a little bit more about Oedipus and this tragic hero. I will let you, and why he's a tragic hero, I will let you read that for yourself. And the use of irony as literary device in the last part of the play is super important. Irony, in its broadest sense, is a rhetorical device, literary technique, or event in on the surface appears to be the case or be expected. What we expect something to be like is actually very different from what actually is the case, what actually does happen. When we talk about expecting one thing and then another thing happens, that's kind of the basics of irony. But there's more intricate, subtle types of irony, and I've put up some pictures here, graphics to demonstrate. For example, verbal irony is like sarcasm. When you get caught in the rain and somebody asks you, how's the weather out there? And you can see that this woman is obviously disheveled and the poor dog is wet too, probably. And she says, yay, great weather. Obviously, that's not to say that she approves of the weather. It's sarcasm. It's a verbal irony. Dramatic irony is like a secret only the audience knows. And again, Oedipus Rex is dramatic irony. We know pretty much right off the bat what Oedipus's fate will be, and we are kind of watching to see that unfold. How does it happen? Why does it happen? When does it happen? And the characters themselves do not know until it is too late. But we as the audience know it's coming, and there's this sort of both a pleasure and a pain in watching these characters head towards their destiny, and knowing that as an audience, we can't stop it, but we can learn from what the story is. And then situational irony is an event that mocks the circumstances. So this person's holding a stone. It says nothing is written in stone, which is basically saying, you know, it, right? That actually was written on a stone. So we talk about sometimes there's some pun work that involves situational irony like that. There's also stuff that, when you're talking about what you expect to happen and the opposite happens. So again, that's irony. And irony in Oedipus the King is a slide on that. Classic example of dramatic irony. Talked a little bit about that, so you can read that on your own. So the basics of this assignment. You go through this PowerPoint slide. I've gone through some of it, but you should go through it again on your own just to kind of shore up the things that I skimmed over. We'll read the text of Oedipus Rex. We will look at, I don't know if I put the summary up. Maybe I got to find that file. But, you can find the summary of the play online. You can view, there are 3 videos. There are links to those videos on the next slide and in the Word document. And then we complete the graphic organizer. So in this slide, you have the 3 videos that link to YouTube videos for short explanations, a little bit more in detail. If what I said was confusing for you in some way or you need more explanation, you can click on these videos. And then for practice, we have these 3 pictures. In the Word document, you would answer the 2 questions for each picture. And then after reading the last part of Oedipus Rex, then we would pick up on these questions. These are 5 questions related to irony in Oedipus Rex in the last part. What do you think is the message? Sophocles is expressing the audience of the play, is how it starts. And then we talk more about what's the tragic character flaw. We did a little of this last week. I put up the slide picture from last week. We have 25 different character flaws. Put that in the box for you so you have that as a reference. So you can answer for that question and use that as the basis for the other questions as well. So and it just kind of goes through the stuff we talked about before. And then we go and end the lesson and the assignment with our weekly central idea response. Again, the slide here reminds you what central idea is. Most people seem to have a good grasp on it, but if anybody is not sure on how to form a central idea or what is a good way to do a precise central idea, I could explain that if you need, but basically we're looking for the lesson that applies to everyone. You can use the key phrase sometimes in life, but you don't need to. It is a way of kind of entry into writing central idea, but it's not always necessary. But what is necessary is that it be a lesson learned that it can apply to you, to me, to everyone in general. And then the 3 questions are the same as they are every week for central idea response. And the reason that is because when you put questions 1, 2, and 3 from the box in, you have formed essentially the first paragraph in what is a formal central idea response paragraph. The first paragraph is about the central idea. And the second paragraph talks a little bit about the literary element, like characterization or conflict or irony in more detail, using quotes and evidence from the story to help prove, the literary element helps to prove the central idea. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week as we go to the final week of the unit. We ask you to do a formal 2-paragraph, 3-paragraph central idea response as sort of the wrap up of this. But next week we will be talking more about this is the first paragraph, what goes into the second paragraph, how you form that. So a lot more on that next week. Let's focus on what we have to do first before we get there. And then you'll probably have noticed that most weeks, I think I try to do this every PowerPoint, is to include the rubrics. How are we grading you? Again, on a 1 to 4 scale, 1 being entering, 2 being approaching, 3 being mastery, 4 being exceeding. The numbers aren't there, but generally on the assignments they are. Basically, you want to get at least a 3 out of 4 on every assignment. The do now graded, the annotations are graded, and then these skills are graded. And when we have a mastery of a skill, basically what we're saying is you can use the skill effectively. You can use it like for a central idea. You know how to establish a thoughtful central idea based on what the story is about. For literary elements, you're able to interpret and explain the elements like characterization. You can tell me about Oedipus Rex's speech, his thoughts, that kind of stuff, and you can use a good explanation to help you do that. So at least a 3 out of 4. If you can get 4 out of 4, that's great. I also do half points as well and quarter points. So if you're not quite a full 4, but you're more than a 3, I will kind of see where you are on that spectrum and give you advice on that. So that is the PowerPoint, and now I'll go into the reading. We'll spend about 1 minute on the reading and another minute on the document. So just to kind of give you the overview, and then we'll wrap things up. So let me see if I can share that with the people who are in the class. That's the answers, that's the reading. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to see this, the Oedipus Rex reading. Just to recap where we're at, Oedipus is getting fearful as he realizes that he is the one who killed his father, King Laius, and had children with his mother, Jocasta. Great. Not so great, obviously. That was sarcasm. So where it says start your reading of part 3 here, that's obviously where you start. And the annotations, there's notes in the boxes here to kind of clarify things that you'll see. There may be moments that ask you to answer questions, but I think this one is, yeah, there's just towards the middle / bottom of the assignment. Like, what does Oedipus realize here? So this week is a little bit, how's Jocasta die? You can write your answers in those boxes if you want, but yeah, it's a lot of just kind of tying things together. Obviously, when we annotate, we're highlighting things that are important. So if you want to use the highlighter option, I'm just picking a random section here, highlight it, and then the ABC icon on your Word document, you can choose a color. And obviously, if you think it's important, you'll highlight, and you can write your answers in the boxes that are there. And that's that for the reading. Once you finish this document, that's the end of the play. So that will be done. And then let's get to the organizer. Okay, so this is week 2 organizer. If you need audio versions, they are on YouTube. So, if you click in Oedipus Rex, audio reading, many different performances of the play. This is one such performance of the last part of the play. The do now is here. So you can see this is the Run DMC song, the annotation and questions. So again, I'm asking you to not use the PowerPoint, to use the Word document to answer questions. And again, when you look at the document, you're going to see these spaces that are highlighted in yellow. That is your indication of where I would like you to write your answers. In the yellow highlighted versions, you can keep it highlighted. You can get rid of the highlight, but as long as you answer the questions in those spaces, we're good. And then central idea down here. So you'll notice it's overall a shorter worksheet this week, organizer this week, although I think the middle section here, the questions about irony, you're going to need to think a little bit more deeply about what is ironic about it and what's the tragic flaws. So, when you're doing this, just think about what's happening to the characters. I think the most obvious is, what are the things they're realizing and what are the consequences of their actions and what's really tragic or upsetting about it, what's sad about it. There's definitely a lot, and I don't want to get into detail about it on the overview, but like when we start breaking it down later in the week, I mean, we can talk a lot about how heavy this is. And again, this is an old ancient play, and it's dealing with these incredibly hard taboo issues that, you know, people were really traumatized by, I guess, the fear of it happening and that kind of stuff. And basically how you know, the defying of the gods at some point by Oedipus, and just going back full circle to what Tiresias said would happen. So yeah, so that's it for the organizer. Again, you can see a lot of it is repeated in the document, but this is where I would like you to write your answers. And again, the message here, once you fill out your answers, you're ready to turn it in. Remember to press the turn in button. But again, as I said in my Friday video last Friday, you know, I've had some issues with some students who they said they turned in the work and they did the work, but then, you know, maybe it didn't auto save, so it came up blank. So always try to get a backup of the work done. Try to figure out, maybe take a screenshot or two of the work so that you have, and this is not just for my class, but for any class, so that you can have assurance that if a teacher says you didn't do the work, but you did, you can just screenshot it and send it to the person and get credit for the work. So that's about it in terms of the overview. And I'm just going to stop here and take questions from everybody who's here. I did see some people jumped in. So again, for those people who are jumping in right now, you can, you know, we got about 4 minutes. Like, we can, after I stop recording here, I'm going to press stop recording, take questions and catch you up. But the recording should be up shortly. All right, guys. So thank you very much for those listening or watching on video. And make sure you get to your assignment. You can ask me questions in the chat if you have questions. All right. Thank you. All right.